Hey everybody, welcome back. Eric Overfield here, one of the community reporters at ESPC 2018. Real excited to have Vesa Juvonen with us. He just finished the day one keynote. Pretty excited. So Vesa, would you please introduce who you are, as well as give us like a brief kind of introduction to your experiences and your history with SharePoint?
Yep, thank you, Eric. So my name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a senior program manager from SharePoint Engineering. I own the developer community, samples, documentation, open source, all kind of what we do with the let's say ecosystem. So making sure that people are able to build stuff using SharePoint development platform. My background on SharePoint, I started as a consultant back in Microsoft back in 2006, right when the SharePoint 2007 Beta 2 was out or came out, and we basically started trying to figure out how to do farm solution development because there was no tooling, no documentation, MSDN wasn't up to date, and now I'm finally on the position where I can actually try to fix that, so to say. So for me, this has been a long journey of 12 years or 10 years to get to the, let's say, to the engineering and owning the documentation and guidance. So being part of the community, being part of the people who actually build solution for the customer, have, at least in my personal opinion, has given me kind of an insight on what should be there and trying to then address those gaps. So
excellent. So you just finished the ESPC 18 day one keynote for the Office 365, Microsoft 365 developer experience and whatnot. What would be like your 30-second elevator pitch that you really hope people were taking away? Or what are some of those key points that you hope people really took away from the keynote?
Well, the number one thing for everything in Microsoft 365 or more and more in Office 365 is to use the SharePoint framework. So use the modern customization patterns, which are future-proven. We in SharePoint Engineering also use them to build the SharePoint itself. So it's future-proven to actually invest your time on those tools. So it's not going to be replaced because, well, the modern SharePoint is built using the SharePoint framework. And what's really cool about that is also that the SharePoint framework has been so successful on the adoption and usage that also Microsoft Teams and other organizations in Microsoft are now looking into building their customizations using the exact same tooling. So if you're a SharePoint developer, you can actually build Microsoft Teams tabs, and you can build other, let's say, surfaces and functionalities in future with the same skill set, and that's really, really valuable.
Excellent, excellent. So you represent basically the whole SharePoint developer ecosystem and whatnot. So what do you see as like one of the biggest challenges right now that are facing SharePoint developers?
That's a good question. So let me think, what would be the challenge? There's no challenges, right? It's just easy, breezy going on. No, there's this, I would say the constant evolution is absolutely the challenge, but that's not a SharePoint specific thing. It's across the whole IT, trying to stay up to date on the latest and greatest and technologies and what's the coolest APIs, because even the documentation and guidance can't keep up with all of the evolution or innovation what's happening. So if you're a classic SharePoint developer, you need to learn new ways of doing customizations, meaning the SharePoint framework. But then even when you're in the SharePoint framework, staying up to date on what's happening in the cloud. So what is Microsoft releasing all the time will definitely be a challenge. What's happening in Azure, because obviously you also use an Azure as the business logic layer for your customizations. What's happening there? It's really hard to keep up. It's really hard to keep up for me as well. So.
Yeah, I completely agree with the answer because I mean, as a SharePoint developer myself, and really where my roots are, the constant change of the SharePoint framework is really great to see. We're always getting new stuff. We're up to 1.7. I think in the keynote you said we had 8 updates so far overall to the SharePoint framework in a very short amount of time, which is really good because I love to see the innovation. We don't have to wait for this 3-year cycle for these major new upgrades to happen, but keeping up to date to it, yeah, that is a challenge. But that's the nature of where we are right now, and to me, this is a good thing, and this is a good problem for us to have, that we at least get these features. We don't have to wait. We can really help our organization succeed. So really great and wonderful to see. So kind of along that line, what would you see as like one of the big mistakes that SharePoint developers might make that could really derail a SharePoint project?
Well, I would come back on understanding where we are investing as a Microsoft. So anything what we're investing as a Microsoft is basically bulletproof for you as well. So as an example, because we're investing on modern, you should be thinking your customizations and deployments to be modern. Otherwise, you will pretty soon need to rethink things because the investments and innovation is happening on the modern experiences. Your customers might start asking capabilities which are only in modern, not in the classic. Or then having a classic example, which we talked so many years already, but doing custom branding using a custom master page it's a dead-end journey because when you create a custom master page, you don't get any additional innovation. You get stuck on that moment of a time, which on the other hand, that might be actually kind of compelling as well, because then you don't actually need to learn any new stuff. But is that really what you want to do? Probably not. So keeping up to date in IT, this is not a SharePoint specific thing. This is not a Microsoft technology specific thing. The innovation keeps on going faster and faster. It's better for us to learn constantly, day to day, new stuff and trying to keep on, rather than being stuck on a certain moment of a time.
I have another question around the SharePoint framework. So in some of the recent updates, in particular 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7, we saw some really cool things come out, some things that people have been asking for. Is there like one or two favorites that you really thought are just so cool that shipped in the last couple versions that you think are really going to drive a lot of new projects in SharePoint?
So for me, the biggest thing is in the 1.6 as a GA is the Graph API support and the custom web API support in the Microsoft Cloud. So you can securely call your custom APIs hosted in Microsoft Azure using the Azure identity. So you have that connectivity securely established, because that will then enable you to surface business application data, your own LOP data, your own on-premises data in the SharePoint Online, using this securely as well. And that's really a mind-blowing, let's say, it's the holy grail. It's been the holy grail of SharePoint Online for many years, and now it's finally possible. Now, the second big thing, kind of related on this one, is the fact that you can build a SharePoint Framework web part and surface that as a Microsoft Teams tab. And for those who might be wondering, well, I'm a SharePoint developer, I don't care about Microsoft Teams. Well, not necessarily, because it's as long as you implement the stuff using SharePoint Framework, it's the same customization in Microsoft Teams. So you expand your reach for those people who are using Microsoft Teams as the platform. And even in Microsoft, we are saying that, well, you can choose. Are you using Microsoft Teams, or are you using SharePoint as a collaboration platform? For us, as an example, for me personally, Microsoft Teams works in certain scenarios, but then on the other hand, I have like 124 new inboxes which I need to follow because I'm in quite a few groups. So it's really hard to keep up on, or Microsoft Teams. So it's really hard to keep up on what's happening. But the Teams integration is really interesting also in the context of the Microsoft Graph, because the Microsoft Graph API surface in SharePoint Framework gives the Microsoft Teams tabs the access to the Graph APIs as well. So now, me as a Office 365 developer, I don't need to call an Azure subscription owner and say that, could you approve these permissions for this application? I can actually do that using the SharePoint admin UIs and the SharePoint operations, which simplifies the development process and enables people to be more productive using the new tooling. Hopefully that makes sense. Pretty long answer.
I really like the idea of being able to integrate SharePoint Framework into Microsoft Teams. One of the stats that you said in your keynote was, I believe it was 474% growth of SharePoint Framework development utilization in the last year alone. Yeah. That is huge. To be able to now take that developer ecosystem and move it into Microsoft Teams, I think is really going to change what Teams is going to be able to offer. I think as we see Teams move in as the viewport to the digital workspace, to be able to take what we built in SharePoint, to be able to surface that in Teams directly, is mind-boggling. I think that's really cool, exciting to see, really cool to see that kind of work happen with you guys. So here we are at ESPC 2018. Are there any particular sessions or topics that you're kind of really interested in, or you'd love to go see some of the sessions on? I know you know everything in SharePoint, but come on, there's got to be some stuff that you would love to go see yourself.
Really good question again. So obviously there's a lot of friends presenting in here in many of the sessions. It would be great to be able to join on all of the sessions in the audience just to show the respects, and that's basically impossible because there's so many great sessions going on at the same time on every single time slot. But I personally, I'm actually more right now interested on let's say the experiences, the business functionalities which we're able to do even out of the box, because I know the developer platform, so then having more depth on what we can do within the out-of-the-box capabilities, and I'm actually interested on also how Susan Hanley and these people are positioning SharePoint. So how do you drive adoption of Office 365 and how people are telling that story for their customers? So as a Microsoft employee, I have no idea how do you do that. So sitting on those audiences and those sessions is super interesting. There are great sessions obviously also on SharePoint Dev track, but still.
Are there any other sessions that you're going to be presenting here at ESPC?
So I have a session on Thursday afternoon, I think it's 2 p.m. around kickstarting your projects around using the SharePoint PMP open source community tooling. So we kind of explain what is a SharePoint PMP and what kind of tooling is available. Do a few cool demos. We're going to talk about the provisioning service, the templates, the reusable solutions and samples, what are available. So there will be like 6 demos potentially in that one. And also how did we get here? So kind of explaining additional context on how did we come up with this remote provisioning and what does it mean within the context of site designs and site scripts, which Sean Squires has a own session on that one, but kind of giving a slightly more detailed explanation. Was it just a lucky guess or where the journey actually started and so on. So.
Super, super cool. Okay, so it is a well-known secret that the best way to get a hold of you is just something at like, what is it? It's I need a SharePoint expert at Microsoft.com, and we know that goes to your inbox. Not true. Don't flood Microsoft. It's not gonna go anywhere. So really, what is the best way that anybody can get help? Because the Dear Vesa I know isn't working. I know that you only scale so much. What's the best way that developers can get help and assistance here in SharePoint? What's the best way that people in general can get help from the community? Because we know that your email box has become locked down and no one gets to talk to you anymore, which is a good thing.
So the easiest way to get help on the developer topic questions and activities is absolutely our GitHub. So GitHub repository sp-dev-docs, sp-dev-docs, and the issue list is one location where you can actually open up issues related on dev platforms. So if there's a problem with the API or functionality or SharePoint Framework 1.7 doesn't seem there's a problem which you can't explain, tell us that. And we have 2 times in a week we are doing a live triage with that one to our team, and then we triage that based on priority of the issue, either fix it right away or delay that. Also the Microsoft Tech community, the SharePoint Dev forum over there is kind of intended for active discussion and helping others within the community. GitHub, definitely active. Microsoft Tech community, definitely active options as well. Social media in general, you can always ask a question in Twitter. I can't promise to answer all of them. Unfortunately, I'm always running out of time because I have my own work as well, but GitHub is better. GitHub probably is the easiest.
The availability that you and that Microsoft has made to the community through GitHub and through User Voice and all these other through tech communities has been outstanding. So I think I can say on behalf of the community, thank you all for very much doing your job. Thank you, Vesa, for joining us today. I really appreciate all your time. Again, my name is Eric Overfield, coming to you live from ESPC 2018, and thank you all for joining us.